passionately interested in the Civil War, and I hope that everybody in this room knows that we are right in the middle of celebrating the 150th anniversary of this incredibly important event in our country's history. I can't possibly explain it all in 20 seconds a slide, but I'm going to try. This is Abraham Lincoln's inauguration, which took place in March of 1861. There's Lincoln, you can see him. When Lincoln was inaugurated, between when he was elected and when he was inaugurated, 7 states separated from the Union. A month later, after he was inaugurated, the Confederate States of America wanted to get Fort Sumter. It was off the coast of the Charleston Harbor, and they bombarded it for 2 days, and finally Major Anderson agreed to surrender it. This is a map of the country at the time. The North was actually very industrial. There were about 21 million people living in the North. It was mostly large cities, densely populated. The South was based in agriculture and dependent on slavery for its economy, with about 9 million people. There were border states that actually didn't secede. This is Robert E. Lee. I love Robert E. Lee. He was a great general. His men worshipped him. He was smart, strategic, and he understood human nature. He was a Southern gentleman. He was polite, dignified, proud, and handsome. I think he's really handsome. And he was asked to lead the Union, but chose to fight for the state of Virginia. This actually represents West Point. Most of the Civil War battles were fought by graduates of West Point who went to school with each other. Many were friends. Ulysses S. Grant was actually introduced to his future wife by James Longstreet, who fought for the Confederacy. This guy, he was a Creole from New Orleans, and he was a mediocre general, but I absolutely love his name, and I want you to all repeat it with me. This is Pierre Cousteau Beauregard. He was a very vain man. He couldn't get along with anybody. Antietam was the bloodiest single day in American history. It was a battle that saw more carnage in 12 hours than any day before or since. A Connecticut regiment actually fought at Burnside's Bridge in Antietam. In 15 minutes, we lost 1/3 of our strength there, 139 casualties. After Antietam, Abraham Lincoln released the Emancipation Proclamation as a very strategic and political move to further weaken the Confederacy. It only freed the slaves in the rebellious states, not in the border states, so actually no slaves were really freed. But it did make the war about slavery, and a lot of people got angry about it. This is Stonewall Jackson. He was fearless and very strange. He was devoutly religious. He fought for the Confederacy. He would not eat pepper because he believed it weakened only his left leg. He also sucked lemons in battle. He would not sit in a chair and rest his back because he believed it squeezed his organs. He was shot by friendly fire and actually died of pneumonia. Blacks in the war, after the Emancipation Proclamation, 180,000 blacks fought for the Union. They fought terrible racism. They fought bravely and with great dignity. Oftentimes, if they were captured by Confederates, they were actually murdered. And then a lot of the men who fought in the Civil War actually did not die from gunshot. Many of them died from disease, about 1 in 4. 56,000 died in prison camps. Diarrhea killed 34,000 people. Typhoid, 29,000. You can see some of the other diseases. There were more than 70,000 amputations with a fatality rate of 25%, very poor sanitary conditions. Here's an amputation going on out in the middle of daylight. Lead balls would shatter bones so that amputation was the only measure against people getting gangrene. Pretty brutal. They didn't really have anesthesia. This is Gettysburg, the costliest battle in the war, 51,000 casualties over 3 days. The town of Gettysburg only has 2,400 people living in it. Can you imagine 51,000 casualties? In the total Civil War, there were 620,000 dead. That was 2% of the population. Today, that would be 6.1 million people. The Gettysburg Address This is the only photo of Lincoln delivering the Gettysburg Address. I love him right there, isn't he cute? The quote at the top strikes me because actually a lot of people don't know that the Gettysburg Address was the dedication of a cemetery. And people don't even know that. Ulysses S. Grant, he was even-natured, he kept his head in battle, he never gave up, he was very shy, he loved horses, but he was willing to do whatever it took to win, even at the cost of thousands of lives. Many people actually thought of him as a butcher. So it was at Appomattox that Robert E. Lee surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant. The war ended in April of 1865. Lee wore his best clothes. Ulysses S. Grant was very disheveled and unshaven, but they actually knew each other because they had fought in Mexico together, so they were acquainted. Oh my God, Abraham Lincoln, I mean, you've got to love this guy. I hope you've all seen the movie. If you haven't, you better go out and see it. Lincoln's entire presidency began and ended with the Civil War. He saved our Union. Some called him a dictator and many didn't like him, but he fervently desired a forgiving peace with the South. John Wilkes Booth was a stage actor who bitterly hated Lincoln, and after the surrender at Appomattox, when he heard a speech where Lincoln mentioned giving black veterans the right to vote, that's what he said, which wasn't very nice. 5 days later, he assassinated Abraham Lincoln. And lastly, this slide to me represents the magnitude of loss and grief, husbands, fathers, brothers, sons. I hope that you read a book, visit a battlefield, see a movie, but please remember the Civil War. It was the defining event in our history.
Thank you.